All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to a brand new episode. We've got a lot to talk about in this session here today. We're still working on a name. We appreciate all the feedback from last week's two episodes. We're going to have the NFL draft episode from last Sunday coming out as well on Monday, but that'll already be out by the time you guys see this episode. But we got a lot to talk about today. We've got the NBA, we've got March Madness, the NFL draft, and then we've got a new segment that we're going to call the wraparound. That'll be the final segment for today. Of course, I've got Ramon, and I've got I almost messed it up again, but I've also got Daryl. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing good, doing good.
Ramon?
I'm doing well, man. I'm still a national champion. Buckeyes in the back. Life's good.
All right, and then Daryl, I think your camera's off. If you didn't know.
Yeah, I'm fixing something here real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm there.
I'm trying
I'll
to
be
showcase that ugly Indiana Pacer.
Whoa! That's a classic logo, though. That's a good logo.
The hate is real. The hate is real, man.
What's crazy is I don't even hate the Pacers. I just like bothering him.
So we are gonna start off with the NBA today. I definitely know what I want to talk about today when it comes to the NBA. But looking at the standings, because we've had some move around in the standings at the last time we talked about it. The most notable move that I'm looking at off first look is the Warriors are now in fifth, so they would play Denver, and the Lakers would now play the Timberwolves. When they were originally, when we last looked at it, they were going to play Memphis. And then on the Eastern Conference, still not that much change. The Milwaukee's moved up to the fifth spot, and then it seems like we see the same teams 7 through 10 every year: Magic, Hawks, Bulls, and Heat, and then the Raptors. At this point, the East seems pretty solidified of who's going to be in the playoffs and who's going to be in the play-in, but the Western Conference is still the Western Conference. I mean, you could go all the way down to San Antonio, who's in 13th, and they still even have a shot to get into the play-in. But I know what I want to talk about, but I'm interested to see what you guys wanted to talk about, so I'll let you guys have the floor first, and then we definitely got to talk about New Orleans today after the news they dropped earlier in the week.
For me, what I want to hit on is the Western Conference playoff scene, right? So we're talking about from 3 through 8. There's a 2-game loss perspective there. So Lakers are 3 seed at 47 and 30, and then you're talking about from that perspective, the next team down at number 8 is the Grizzlies at 46 and 32. There's a lot to be determined over these next 5 games, and that's going to kind of shake that out. So this thing could be upside down in the West when we're talking about this maybe next Sunday. So it very well could be turned upside down, and we'll see what happens. But I tell you what, the Lakers, they really want to play Memphis in that first round series, if at all possible. So it's going to be interesting to see how players are sitting, who's playing, who's not, and talking about effort over this next 4 to 5 game stretch.
Ramon, what are you noticing when you look at those standings?
Yeah, I just look at the standing and just what Kai said. He's 100% right. Things can look really different. You could blink your eye and everything can change in a minute. Being a divorced Laker fan, you look at number 3. You look at number 3 at 3, and it doesn't look. If I was a betting man, I wouldn't bet that they're going to stay at number 3, unless a couple teams start resting players in these last 5 or 6 games they got. They got a tough schedule. And only being 2 games separating people, you playing Oklahoma City back-to-back. You got to go to Dallas, got to go to Portland for your 6 are on the road.
Yeah, well, they play the Rockets at home before they go to Portland.
Yeah, so that's rough. So I can see those guys.
I don't think they want the 3 seed. There may be some difference.
It's crazy because in a normal life, you would never want to play the Nuggets over
Minnesota.
But if you're the Lakers, you do want to play. You do want to play you do want to play the Nuggets. You want to stay away from that Minnesota team. just because of matchups and style of play.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I agree. And as
Yeah.
a Lakers fan that has not filed his papers, I don't know how to feel. And I said it. I said it when we had AD. I said the only team that scares me, and that was before we traded AD. I said the only team that scares me is Denver and Oklahoma City. When we traded for Luka, I still feel the same way. Obviously, Minnesota is going to be tough because I think I agree with what Ramon just said. Matchup wise, Minnesota is definitely match really well with us. But I still kind of feel the same way. I still think the Thunder scare me the most. The Nuggets definitely still scare me regardless. We beat Houston last week. We beat them pretty handedly too. Golden State, I'm not too worried about, even though they beat us this week, but I'm not too worried about the Warriors either. Honestly, the team that has scared me, and I've honestly given them the cold shoulder all season. I don't like I wouldn't want to see the Clippers. The Clippers have been hot in the last few months, and I give a lot of credit to Kawhi and Harden because I think a lot of people, including myself, thought, oh, they lost Paul George. Harden's kind of a shell of his former self. Kawhi can't stay healthy. In this last, I want to say month, and maybe even if you dip your toe into February, the Clippers have looked good. Kawhi's putting up at least 20 points a game. Harden last night had 14 assists. So I think the Clippers are very scary, and I got to give a lot of credit to Zubac as well. He's doing a tremendous job as that third option for the Clippers. That we were talking about dark horses last week, and I said the Warriors. I'm gonna switch my pick. I'm gonna say the Clippers. I think the Clippers, if they match up against Houston, they're gonna give they're gonna give that young Rockets team some problems if Kawhi stays healthy.
Well, I think at this point, I think it's been kind of determined that he is going to be healthy, right? Because
Yeah,
he's they've done some load management, but that's what we do in the NBA now, right? So I'm looking at the Clippers right now, just as you talked about, over the last 10 games, they're 8-2 over their last 10, and they do finish up with the Warriors their last game of the season, but they got the Clippers, and they got the Kings, and they got the Rockets prior to that, and then the Spurs. So that's going to be a shakeout as well too. Again, for my take, the Clippers. You talked about Zubac, being that third wheel, and I think what's happened with the Clippers as far as their health is concerned, they've gotten a little bit healthier, and I
yeah,
think that's the deal right there. You're talking about guys who are saying, Norman Powell is back now, and he's playing better. He's getting back into the swing of things. I
mm-hmm.
think Norman Powell is really that third wheel, and then with Zubac coming in with the cleanup, with that from that
Yeah,
perspective. But I think Norman Powell is going to be the opportunity to be the difference if this season isn't a fluke for him. He's kind of come out of nowhere from the
yeah,
national spotlight, and now remember if you're talking about it, Bron took his spot on the All Star team.
yep,
If he can sustain what he's done over the season, the Clippers, yeah, you're right. There is going to be a challenge for
Ramon.
anybody.
Ramon, what are your thoughts on the Clippers?
I look at both the LA teams almost the same. Like if you could make them defend on the perimeter, they're gonna be in trouble. You
Okay,
know, I like Kawhi and I like the Clippers and I like what they're doing, but if you ever got to make James Harden defend somebody, you playing 4-on-5.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
He's
very,
not going to defend. He's not going to defend people. So you have to do a lot of stuff on the offensive end to keep you in a 7-game series, play against other elite talent, other good guards, other guys who offenses that can move the ball. Now, if it's an isolation offense, stuff like that, it
yeah,
won't hurt you much. But if you got guys who move the ball, who bodies move, who dive to the basket,
Golden State is one, right? So
exactly, you get in trouble with those guys.
yeah,
And so that's the Golden State. That's somewhat the Thunder. You
yeah.
know,
Well, I was
you,
gonna,
you
yeah,
get you get in trouble with those guys. The Nuggets, you can get in trouble with those guys because Luca and the Beard, they don't defend. They won't defend. They choose they choose not to or choose not to put in as much effort, even if you're not technically sound defensively or if you have bad physical capabilities, whatever it may be. Your effort and your communication got to be at a high level to
yeah.
defend teams like that. And I just don't see that from them two guys.
yeah,
Rotations will be key.
Yep.
When you're talking about guys that are devoid of the footwork on the defensive end. I mean, it's almost sort of like the Halliburton thing as well, right? So how well does the Pacers rotate out of those high pick and rolls, right? That's going to be the big deal. Where we go on that screen game. And if you're sound in your screen game, yeah, you have an opportunity. But if you're not disciplined on that screen game, you're not communicating, yeah, you could be ran out the gym pretty easily.
You got guys on the backside who got problems with eye discipline and they watching the ball.
Yeah.
You know, you have all kind of bad rebounding position, people diving to the basket, guards relocating, closeouts now become wide and long, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like those guys, but I don't know if I'm sold on a deep run. Unless, it's still the NBA. Somebody can catch offensive fire for 5-6 games and things look a lot different.
Injuries are going to matter as well, too. Don't forget that. Injuries are going to matter as well.
Yeah, injuries are going to – it didn't play much of a part in the West, I feel like, with injuries. The East last year, injuries were definitely more sporadic, I would say. And, I mean, there's a lot of talking points in the West. I feel like the East, it's pretty much decided in the East of what it's going to look like. But in the West, I mean, there's two teams also that I'm really curious to see how their offseason is going to go. And I know – we've been talking about playoffs, but there's two teams that have a lot of questions because they're right now one of them's in the play-in and then the other one's looking in, and that's Sacramento and that's Phoenix. Both are gonna have to make some decisions this offseason, right? I mean, you've got Phoenix, who, I mean, you would assume a team with Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and KD would work out. At least the national media would want you to think. But I think I think when we were talking, Daryl, they just weren't. We kind of said Phoenix isn't going to work. I said Phoenix wasn't going to work when they first traded for KD, and now the rumor is they're going to trade KD in the offseason, which I think they should do because you're wasting Devin Booker's prime years. And then another report came out. I don't know if you saw it. Shams Charania, he said it on the Pat McAfee show. Boston was going to trade Jaylen Brown to Brooklyn for Kevin Durant before that Phoenix trade went through, but Brooklyn declined that trade. I don't understand why these teams think trading for KD is going to work, because since he's left Golden State, what has Kevin Durant done? We can talk about, his foot was on the line against Milwaukee.
What he's done individually is a team game, right? So, I understand there's a lot of discord about KD. He's held his end of the bargain. KD comes to play every night. He doesn't take a game off. He hoops, right? And that's what he's done all his career. The challenge is you went to Brooklyn, right? You get, we had the COVID situation, and the Harden thing didn't work out because.
But with KD, he got to make. Oh, go ahead.
Come on, KD, right? So we start with Brooklyn, right? So it wasn't his fault about the injuries. That's something that played a part of that, right? Brooklyn's been a mess. I'll call them the New Jersey Nets, have been a mess for the last 15 years. That isn't anything new. Yeah. And then you have the COVID situation coming to play. Kyrie's not playing. Harden's not. It's faking an injury he wants out. So those things aren't on KD. Yeah, he made the decision to opt out of his last year at Golden State and go to Brooklyn. Yes, it's fine. But he held his end of the bargain up. Then you flip it. Then you go to Phoenix, right? Same thing. They trade, their young core, Phoenix does, to Brooklyn for KD. KD goes there thinking he and Devin Booker, two high, prolific scorers. He didn't ask them to make those other trades from behind the scenes. With regard to no, listen what I'm saying. He doesn't. He just came to Phoenix. He didn't have the juice that Bron does. There's no comparison there. And what I'm saying is he gets to Phoenix, and then they make the decision to bring Bradley Beal in, who's a stat whore on a bad team in Washington. Right? Bradley Beal's never been a superstar player. Never. Somebody's got to score points on a horrible team, and he was that guy. And what he did, he parlayed that into I think a 4-year, 200
no trade clause.
$1 million deal, right? He held him hostage, right? Then he goes to Phoenix, and people think, oh man, we got a big three. I never thought that.
Never did either.
He's never been a defender, and he's a scorer on a horrible team. And what he's shown, in Phoenix is what I believed he is. He's a guy that's going to score you some points here and there. He's not engaged. He could have accepted a trade. He said he didn't want to. He wanted to stay in Phoenix. He's holding all the cards, which is great. Right. But, we can't sit there and say that that's all 100% on KD.
I'm not saying it is, but
he's a part of the problem. Absolutely. I'll give you that. Right. He hasn't stayed healthy over the last couple of years. with the ankle injuries and things like that. But you got to look at it as a big picture, right? And for me, the Phoenix things was a mess after they lost in the finals to Milwaukee. They panicked.
Yeah.
The coach, the prior coach who went to Detroit, had some not so kind words about the center. DeAndre Ayton talked about how he was a liability and he hasn't lived up to his number one pick billing and all those things. And then that thing fell through after the trade when they traded their core. And now that's what you have. You got a team that's in the second apron, who's not very good, who's begging to get into a play-in. That's who they are.
Well, and then I don't know. I think KD, especially with not so much Phoenix, but I think Brooklyn, he had say so. I think he had more say so than a lot of people thought. He wanted Steve Nash, and then he said he wanted Steve Nash gone along with Kyrie. I will say he had more say so in Brooklyn. And you mentioned the Bron line. I think he was trying to be Bron in Brooklyn, not so much in Phoenix. Phoenix is not his fault. I'll give you Phoenix, but Brooklyn was on his fault. He wanted Kyrie, then he wanted Harden. He wanted Steve Nash and then did not want Steve Nash. And then Jack Vaughn, I don't know if Vaughn was his decision or not, but obviously he got traded out of there before we could see how it worked out. And now who's going to trade for him? I heard Memphis may happen. I heard Houston was trying to get him at the deadline, which I'm glad they didn't. I don't see why Houston would try to ruin what they have. So I'm curious to see where they go. And then the second team I want to discuss is Sacramento. A report already came out a couple months ago that Sacramento and Sabonis are going to sit down and they're going to, decide the future of the franchise and where they go. I think Sacramento went wrong when they got rid of their head coach earlier in the year. And then obviously De'Aaron wanted out, which is understandable. But now you got to move Sabonis and then you just kind of have Zach LaVine. And Zach LaVine reminds me a lot of Bradley Beal, right? He's just kind of there, I feel like. He's okay, but I don't think he's part of that future in Sacramento. And then the other person they've got, who is it? Who am I forgetting? Who is it? It's Zach LaVine.
Are you talking about the kid? Their third best player, kid from Iowa. Did they draft Murray? Yeah, Murray. I think Murray. Yeah. Murray's going to be their cornerstone, in my belief.
So I'm curious to see what Sacramento does. And that question I'll ask you guys is, where does KD go and where does Sabonis go? Because I think they both get moved this offseason, unless Sacramento makes a move to pair Sabonis up with somebody, but I don't see that happening unless they move Zach LaVine.
I want to jump back and say one thing about Phoenix, right?
Go ahead.
I don't think any of these guys are truly the problem. I think Phoenix is.
Yeah, their new owner's definitely he definitely pulls the trigger pretty quick.
When they grab Bradley Beal, I look at Bradley Beal as different. I think I like him, but I don't like him to lead.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm not talking about being the best player on the team, but when you try to make him a point guard, you destroyed the whole team. Bradley Beal is just the same piece as Devin Booker.
That was their issue from day one.
So you went out and got the same piece. You didn't get nothing better. Nothing. You got the same piece. It's like going out. I mean, I could buy Jordan's shoes, but if I get two left Jordan shoes, it's going to hurt a little bit on one of my feet.
Ramon, it's almost like they try. You remember when D'Antoni came into Houston and D'Antoni told Harden, okay, you're going to play point guard, and it worked. It worked. It's almost like they tried to do that with Beal, and it completely went wrong. And they brought in Tyus Jones to try and fix it, but it was already too late. And then obviously,
I don't even think when they move Harden to point and in Houston it worked. I think
they got to the conference finals, so.
You could never win a championship with Harden.
I'm just saying when you compare it, Houston just saw more success out of the move, and then Harden still plays point guard.
And Houston didn't have two more dynamic players like KD and Booker.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, Harden's playing the point. He's also playing the two. He's playing everything. I'm dribbling it and I'm shooting it.
Yeah.
Now when you gotta lower your game and distribute to two other people who probably score better than you at a higher clip and more efficient,
are
you willing to swallow that pill? Are you really willing to take that back seat? Are you willing to be that guy? You gotta be a special guy to be like, okay, I got some skills, but I'll be a third option.
Yeah.
you mentally, emotionally got to be a special guy. And I don't know Bradley Beal like that, but just what I saw at Washington and other places, he don't look like the guy who's going to come in and say, okay, I'm going to orchestrate this. I'm going to make sure everybody get theirs. And then if I have to get mine, I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to defend my position and rebound my position.
Yeah, that's a good point. Where do you both see Sabonis and KD going if they move, or do you think they get moved?
I mean, I believe that KD is going to be on the move for sure, right? Because they've already been talking about that, and of course they even had the conversation with before the trade deadline going to the Warriors. He declined that, which I don't blame him to decline that at this point, right? He didn't want to be there. He didn't want to be a part of that chaotic situation with the Saginaw Strangler, and I can't blame him, right? The guy didn't respect what he was doing. We don't need you. Then all of a sudden, this year y'all begging for help, right? So, it kind of blew up in his face. The good thing for them is, Jimmy Butler has saved their season. Jimmy Butler has put Golden State in a situation where they're viable again. They were not viable prior to that trade. But to that point, I think KD, there's somehow, I believe KD goes to the East. I don't know who. Maybe it's Miami because, they love to shoot, big game hunting. You just never know. But I just believe that he's going to go to the East somewhere. And I don't know where that East team is, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's in the East. And then with Sabonis, yeah, he's a good player, very good player, but he doesn't move the needle. He doesn't swing the team's fortune from, maybe a second round team to a conference finals team. He's a stat whore as well too, right? He's limited on defensive end. Yeah, he gets a lot of rebounds. Yeah, because there's a lot of missed shots that he's there to get.
Yep.
But for that perspective, though, is he's not a supreme needle mover. I think he's a third or fourth guy on the championship team. But is he willing to look at that as an opportunity for him at this point, right? You just never know. But again, if he does move anywhere, I would imagine he will probably stay in the West. And it wouldn't surprise me or shock me, or if the Lakers try to do something to try and grab some bonus. The Lakers are a donut right now. They thought Alex Len was going to come save the day, and they got egg on their face with that. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's a potential swing to try to get Sabonis somehow, some way. And I don't know what they've got to give up, but I wouldn't be surprised if Sabonis travels down south to La La Land.
Okay, so we've got 10 minutes left in this one. So I think what we'll do is we're gonna continue on, but we're gonna restart the meeting if that makes sense.
Okay.
So we'll continue on with this NBA segment because there's a lot to talk about. So I kind of expected this.
Yeah.
So we'll come back and we'll continue on with I guess we'll move on to Ramon, we'll let you talk about Sacramento. I'll give my thoughts on Sacramento. And then we'll jump into the New Orleans part of the segment as well.
Simple for me, man. I think that I can see Sabonis head to LA.
Okay.
Just makes sense. LeBron's on his way out. You add that third piece. Him, Luka, the guard. They could be deadly on offense. You may be able to steal a championship in LeBron's last year. May have just enough firepower to scoot through offensively and to hide some of the deficiencies that team will have defensively. So it's a chance that he can in there. I could also see him going to, depending on how the draft pans out, and I could imagine him going to Utah. You got him, Cooper Flag, a couple other pieces, and maybe a start or something. It's a stretch, but I could see it. And I think that something like that would be great for him because now he's going to be kind of that guy for a little bit, until he passed the torch to the new star if they was to get somebody like Flag, so I can see something like that happening. I don't see him going to the East for no reason. I just don't. And I guess that's kind of personal. Like, I don't look at him as that type of tough basketball player, so I can't see him going that direction. I think he's going to stay in California. What would be a stretch for some reason if somehow he ended up in Golden State?
Yeah. The team that in the East that would trade for him
But you never know. You never know.
Yeah.
The team in the East that would trade for him because they love making trades that don't make a difference, Atlanta. Atlanta loves making trades where it doesn't make no difference for them.
I try to stay away from
I was
talking
looking
about
at
Atlanta.
I was looking at every team in the East and I'm like, there's no fit. But if there's one team that would do it and give up 4 first-round picks for him, it would definitely be Atlanta. It screams DeJounte Murray part two, but I agree with you, Ramon. I think he ends up in the West somewhere. Honestly, a team, but I don't think Sabonis will go there because they already have a center. But a team that I would like to see maybe make a move because they're not that far out of the play-in is Portland. I like Shaden Sharp a lot. I like Anthony Simons. Once again, I've never been sold on Ayton. So for me, I wouldn't mind if they moved Ayton to get a better piece in there, but I would like to see Portland make some type of move to elevate them from maybe, being the 10th seed in the play-in to maybe like trying to fight for an actual playoff spot instead of having to fight in the play-in. I would like to see Portland make that move, but I agree on the Sacramento side of things. I think Sabonis goes. I don't know if the Lakers will make that type of move. I don't know how much. I think the big thing for the Lakers would they move Austin Reeves? And I think that's the biggest thing because even at the deadline they were so affirmative of we're not going to move Reeves. Whatever it takes, we're not going to move him. So I think for them it's going to be if you want a center of that caliber because we can cost a bonus, he stat pads and stuff, but at the end of the day, he's averaging double doubles. You're going to want compensation for someone that's doing that. So I think for the Lakers, it's going to be: are you going to get rid of Austin Reeves if somebody asks for Austin Reeves? I don't see it happening.
I don't know.
There's a good chance, but I don't think they get Sabonis.
You just mentioned something, right? And it just triggered something in my mind because I was thinking, right? A lot of times we watch the games and we hear the talking heads and we believe what they say, right? So if I gave you this statistical information on a player, you tell me what you think about this young man's opportunity to be a difference maker. Career average 16 points, 10.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, and he's a front court player. What do you think? We're talking about 16 and 11 and an assist and a half over his career, and he's a mid-20s player. Is that a guy that the Lakers will look at? Is that a guy that Golden State could look at? Is that a guy that could be a finishing piece on a team? You would think, well, possibly, depending on where it is, right?
Yeah. And how he gets those numbers.
Right. Those are DeAndre Ayton's numbers of his career, right? He's measured because he was the first player picked in a draft that had Luka Doncic and Trae Young in it. He's measured not on what he's done. He's measured on where he was drafted at, right? The guy's not a bum, but you give me 16 and 10.5, and this is not being an integral player. This is a guy who's being, mid card level guy, right? So even when he was at Phoenix, he was the third or fourth seed. Then he went to Portland. He was never looked at as, hey, this is our savior, right? This is our third or fourth guy. So what I'm saying is he's going to rebound the ball. He's absolutely going to rebound the ball. The issue you have with him is where does his motor sit, right? He'll have 3-game stretch where he doesn't get it out of first gear. Then he'll have a 3-game stretch where he just driving in fifth gear and rolling. That's your challenge you have. And I think sometimes a change of scenery can do a guy good, especially if he feels like the team and the organization has his back. He's got 1 year left on his big deal that Pacers signed him to the offer sheet almost 4 years ago now. So this coming year is going to be it for him. He had a 4-year deal. So there's going to be some play with DeAndre Ayton, and I wouldn't be surprised if, in fact, he's on that table as well from that Laker perspective or a Golden State perspective, a team that needs a guy up front. Just something to think about.
Is there any other teams you guys want to hit on? We've been talking about the West a lot. Is there anything on the East we want to talk about before we get into New Orleans?
Kevin Durant to the Knicks.
Yikes. No way. No, I don't think so.
You know what? I would love to see that because you're talking about a shakeup. You're talking about picks, first round picks going, players going. Could be OG and Anobi going because they just signed to that big deal. There could be some real movement there. I'm looking for chaos to that point. So I
Yes,
want
that would shake everything up.
Yeah, I want chaos as well. That would be interesting.
Okay. Is there a team on the East where you guys have an opinion on?
You know, for me and my take is I said it from the beginning. You know, the shock is Cleveland, right? You know, Cleveland has you know from pillar to post, right? Let's see what happens when it gets a little tighter. You're not, you know, scoring 126 points in the night. You know, it's a 105, 110 point game. Who do you go to in crunch time? And how do you stand up on the defensive end with those small point guards you got in the backcourt? That's what I'm interested to see. And yeah, I'm not saying, you know, Cleveland's not going to be good or whatever the case may be. I'm just interested to see how they play when there's some adversity, right? You know, they haven't had much adversity from a game perspective all season. They had a couple of injuries, but they've led pillar to post. They haven't been challenged pretty much I think they got off to what 20-1 or 19-2 or something like that at the beginning of the season, and they just kind of rode the wave, right? That big win, they beat Boston when they were down 20 points in the first quarter against Boston and came back and won that game. Bang, there you go. So now let's see what happens come you know, end of April into May.
I want to see what Milwaukee does in the next year or so.
Yes. Yep. I want to see what they do too.
Does Dame come back this year?
I wouldn't bring him back. If I'm Milwaukee, I'm sitting there like, man, it's time to move on from Dame.
But think about it, right? So, you know, you talking about that the clot he had, right? And then last year he had that injury, right? And Giannis had the injury last year. And now you're talking about, you know, you trade Chris Middleton for Kyle Kuzma, which made zero sense.
It was
but now you're in a, to your point, you got a 35-year-old Dame, and Dame time may be running out. You know,
Oh, sorry, I was just agreeing. Yeah.
No, you're right, man. It's the clock didn't tick on Dame time. You know.
Yeah, okay. He'll have some good games here and there, but to that point, is he going to be a needle mover to the point where Milwaukee gets back to the Eastern Conference Finals? I think in absolutely no way in God's green earth at this point.
Giannis go ahead.
No, let's say we are wrong, and Dame's got a lot more in the tank. Does Dame fit? You know, does he fit? Does him and Giannis really fit on a championship level?
Who do you pair with Giannis if he leaves?
Want to cause chaos?
Huh?
KD and Giannis?
No. You know what I was gonna say, but I don't think
I don't think it'll happen because of the markets and stuff like that. But could you see them two playing together?
Probably, yeah.
I could because they're different players. Different players, you know, Giannis needs to stay in that 12-foot range. You know, the challenge I have with Giannis is this guy's been in the league double-digit years now. He's been, you know, the Greek freak, you know, always going to be the greatest. When they won the title, he still is the same guy for me, other than he's just bigger. He still doesn't have a three-point shot. You know, if he puts the ball on the floor before he shoots, not good things are happening. You know, he's got that catch and shoot, right? And then or in the post with his long stride, 3 or 4 steps, and get into the bucket. You know, he hasn't put guys in the position where they've got to guard him on the perimeter and really respect him. And I think that's what's missed in his game. And I think it's past him now at this point. I don't think he's going to come in and all of a sudden become a mid-range beacon. I just don't. I think he is who he is at this point.
Do you think he has to be, though?
Well, I mean, they won a title, yeah. But subsequent to that, you know, he from my take, he's an easy guard if you've got a team of guys with 6'9", 6'10" that can pressure him, right?
Okay.
You know, and I don't believe that he's oh man, it's hard for me to say. He can't make it on his own, right? Yeah, he's got the long strides and gets downhill, but the playoff game isn't that always.
No, I agree.
And that's I'm trying to think of the words for it, but it's just not there. It's just not there.
What about Ja?
Who?
Ja will not be in Memphis next year, right?
What if he goes to Milwaukee? Just hypothetically, I don't think it happens, but when if you put him next to him?
This is what I think about Ja. Ja's a cute piece to look at.
Yeah.
Similar, he's gonna get downhill, but he's not a consistent outside shooter.
Yeah, I
as well.
agree.
He's looking to drive, right? He's not looking to to come off on a high screen and dropping three. He's looking to drive and get to the basket. He's a Timu version of Allen Iverson. I mean, that's who he is to me. And yeah, I think it would be a bad fit for he being in Milwaukee, but Milwaukee may have to do something because the time is running out. If Giannis is going to say, "Hey, you all didn't do anything for me to help me get back to the championship," I'm looking to leave. He's given him double-digit years. He can say that, and it shouldn't be any hate towards him.
Yeah. I mean, Giannis has said, I remember when they were trying to get him to re-sign, and I remember all the talk of like Giannis wants to go to Golden State. And I've kept that in the back of my mind because I'm like, I don't think he goes anywhere else. He wants to play with Steph.
Bad fit.
He wants to play with Steph. I'm not saying I want to see it. I'm just saying he has said that multiple times that he wants to play with Steph. So I'm just saying if he leaves, I'm putting that. I put some money on it.
Golden State doesn't have enough to give.
No, I agree, but I just think
they got nothing. What they got? You gonna give up the Saginaw Strangler? I mean,
I don't know. I hit the computer.
Come on.
We forget about what they have the trade value and stuff like that, and just look at the trade itself. I think Giannis to the Golden State prior to Jimmy would be bad. I think the Golden State with Jimmy, Steph, and him will be deadly. Jimmy is that kind of guy. I think that is like whatever you need, I can get you.
And they've got the assets to make that. If they do a sign and trade, they'd have the assets because you can give Kuminga, you can give what's his name, Brandon. I can't say his last name. You can give. You've got the assets to make that move if you need.
3 years. What makes you think they're gonna want to give him up now? There's been offers on the table for Kuminga for the last 3 years. They love Kuminga, right?
If it was a sign and trade to get Giannis, I'm not saying
they're not. What I'm saying is I still don't believe that's enough for Milwaukee to say we're okay with that. Even if Giannis says I want out, I'm not looking at Kuminga, Brzezinski. You know what Brzezinski is?
I'm not taking that.
He's a knockoff of Steve Kerr when he was the Bulls when he left Cleveland.
There's some picks in there too.
He's benefiting from where he is. Let's be honest. Yeah. He's benefiting from where he is. So I just don't think that Milwaukee, Golden State has anything close enough. Even if you have throw Kuminga in there, because you look at where else? Yeah, Kuminga, Brzezinski. Who else? You gave up your assets to Miami for the Jimmy Butler deal.
Yeah, that's true.
Buddy Hield, come on, man. I mean, we're reaching here. Could it happen? Of course it could happen. I just don't see it happening.
I just think when you're Milwaukee, we've said it for the last. I've been saying it for the last 1 or 2 years. Milwaukee's core is getting old. It got older when you traded for Dame. It's just an old core. So I think if you do inevitably have to get rid of Giannis, what are you going to look for? Because
you look for picks. You're looking for picks.
Well, I think you look for picks, and then you look. I don't know. Yeah.
You're looking for picks and goals. That's my point. You're looking for youth. You're not looking for grizzled veterans of 10 years. You're looking for youth. Yeah. And Golden State doesn't have it. You know who has that? Chicago has that. Chicago has youth and picks, right?
Miami?
It should happen. But if you want to talk about it, staying in the East, staying in that division, you're talking potentially Chicago. That I could see that down the road if, in fact, Chicago wants to swing for the fences. I don't think they should because I think they got a good young core. I think they got some good things going for their team.